Das funktioniert jetzt?
Das funktioniert jetzt.
Perfekt.
Oh, doch Deutsch? Alle sind Deutsch jetzt. Shall we do German?
I can't speak German.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Nein?
Nein.
Okay, okay, we do it in
Schade.
Of course we do
English, bitte.
We do it in English.
No, I don't speak German that well, so
Okay.
I've only
Okay.
been learning it for 5 years. Maybe in 50 years I'll have learned German.
Okay. Okay. Let's try to start at the beginning for the introduction. If someone does not know you, how would you describe yourself in short words, and what were your first contacts to the computer scene, to computer soft and hardware? That's a bit for the introduction. We go back in the time.
No,
You first. You first.
right from the start.
A bit
Wow.
closer with the microphone. It's
Yeah, how's this?
This is perfect.
Yeah. Okay, from the start. When I was, I don't know, I guess like 8, 9 years old. That's when the first Pong games were coming out. So there was a Grandstand 2000 available in the UK. And this had 20 different games, and it was all Pong.
Oh.
Yeah, just slightly bigger bat,
Squash,
smaller bat.
ice hockey.
Oh, yeah, it had squash as well.
Yeah, soccer.
And I just thought this was amazing, and my father just couldn't understand. You're doing this, and it makes things move on the television.
Yeah, you move the television.
He said, wow, this is amazing. So it was good because it gets him on board. And then eventually the 2600 comes out, the Atari. So that was just like, it's in color. And it actually has like some sound that isn't just beep.
Yeah.
And then one of my neighbors was working on mainframe computers. So he would, every month, he would give me a stack of Personal Computer World magazine.
Wow.
And I would just go through this and go, wow. So, you know, computers get big and they can do all sorts of great things.
Some in Playboy, you had the International Computer.
Yeah. It's kind of sad, but, you know, the Playboy came later.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
And your first contacts to
Right, yeah.
Technic?
Similar machine, actually, except ours was a binatone with Pong and golf and all the
Binatone,
same game. Yes. We had that in, well, what had been, 1978. I was about 4 years old, I think. And we didn't really have anything after that. My next real introduction to a computer was that a few years later, my auntie had a Commodore 64. And I didn't even know what it was. I just knew you could just type things into it, and I'd type in my address, and it's like, oh, it's on screen. And then that was it. But later that year, when it came to Christmas, my mum and dad asked if I wanted a computer, and so I said yes. And the choice was between the Commodore 64, because my auntie had one, or a Japanese thing called the Sword M5, because it looked quite interesting on the newspaper adverts. And luckily, I went with the Commodore 64, because the Sword M5 obviously went nowhere, certainly in the UK. And then I just played games. Played games, more games, and then ended up with the Amiga. Yeah. Forged my career doing music.
I'm going to ask a question now. So, do you think the reason you went to the Amiga was because you were with Commodore, with the 64?
Yep. It was the natural evolution.
Yeah.
Natural evolution. I think it's more like a technical evolution.
Well, it's just really strange because I was speaking with a guy who's hopefully in the audience just a minute ago. And yeah, initially I was supposed to get a BBC Micro. And because they didn't have enough stock, my father phoned me from a computer shop and said, look, it's not coming. So I'm standing here in front of a VIC-20. Is this okay? And I was like, I don't give a shit. I just want a computer. But I was clever. I said, does he have the RAM packs there? I don't know. I asked. So then, yeah, so the VIC-20 and then the 64 and so on. So I could have had a completely different path. Yeah.
At what time you thought about doing things with computer as a professional job?
Well, for me, the way I worked, I was really into music on the Commodore 64, but I couldn't make it myself. I couldn't program, so I couldn't do my own play routines. I didn't have any software for it. And at that time, it's not like you had the internet, so it's not like I could get software off anybody else. But when I went onto the Amiga, and I went to a computer club, and then we would share software. And one week, I got the Ultimate Sound Tracker, and then I basically stopped playing games. I just would mess around with Sound Tracker every single day. And then after about probably 8 months, it got to the point where I'd be playing games, and I'd be thinking, my music's better than that. And that's when I seriously thought, I might be able to do what they're doing. And I would give my music out at the computer club, and then somebody at the club, his friend ran a game company that was nearby, and they got in touch, and I got to do Last Ninja 2, and then I got in touch. One of my friends got a job at Psygnosis then, and that's how I got the link with Psygnosis, and then ended up getting a job at Psygnosis. And
you were at Psygnosis at the same time?
I was well, Tim was freelance before I had a job there, and then I was freelance for Bill's Tomato Game, but then I got a job there probably, what, a year, 18 months before?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Tell us something about the days at Psygnosis. How was that company at that days? How did you work there? What was a normal day at Psygnosis?
It was the best of days and the worst of days. So when I first started, and we were just pure Amiga, it was amazing. It was just, I couldn't wait to go back into work on a Monday. That's how good it was. First day there, and I've got my nice new Amiga 600 it was, with my monitor and telephone and desk, and I couldn't believe it. I was 19, I think. I'd just come out of college, and just surrounded by amazingly brilliant people, amazing artists, brilliant programmers, and everyone is trying to look at what we're going to be doing in 5 years' time. And then, you know, there's a prototype Amiga 4000. Never seen that before. How many colours? Yeah, it was a brilliant time right at the beginning there.
And you both did music, or did you program other things too?
Yeah, we both created music for the games, but that was one of our bones of contention, is that people would call us musicians. And back in the day, you weren't a musician. You were a musician, programmer, designer. You were responsible for many things. Some of the tools that you needed as part of the job, you ended up making yourself and actually programming yourself. So because we had graphic artists, we decided that we would be called sound artist. Sounds kind of pretentious, but it kind of covered all the different aspects.
Did you play instruments at the days?
Well, to some extent. I mean, I've never been taught, but I can play a bit.
Oh, come on. You can play the recorder.
Well, I play guitar better than anything else now, but back then I didn't really play much, just bashed around on the keys a bit. He's better.
He's a good one?
I taught myself to play the guitar, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, when I was like 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
And I've had formal, actual piano forte lessons from 7 upwards.
So you were a Joy Division fan, so you want to play the same riffs?
No, not Joy Division. Howard Jones.
Howard Jones, okay.
Nick Kershaw. Anybody that had a synthesizer.
Ah, okay.
So this was my dream. It wasn't to write music for games, it was to be Howard Jones. Didn't happen. I took a different route. But I'm happy I did. It's, I think this is more fun.
I just want to show the Bill's Tomato Game, which we had in sale, but it's already sold. I don't know if one of you bought it. You bought it? Okay.
No, I didn't buy it, but I'll sign it.
You put it aside. So this was one of the nice games we had in the shop. We were pretty... it was fun because it had some ketchup inside.
Oh wow!
A lovely thing inside with a free surprise from Heinz.
Yeah, I wonder how that tastes now.
Yeah, it would
pretty good. It's probably got alcohol in it now.
I'm pretty sure you can smoke it right now.
Yeah. Or it would just burn through the chair.
Like an alien movie.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, we had the early days. Mike, what were your role models in music? Do you have any persons you admire or you want to be like them?
Well, I was very into synthy stuff in the 80s, but when we got towards in the 90s, I then got into metal, and so I got to do all of the games that had guitar in. And there was a point actually at Psygnosis where I became known. I think it was after the Formula 1. It's like everybody forgot that I could do any other type of music. And all they wanted, right, that's got to have guitar in.
This has got guitars, give it to Mike.
Yeah, every single time. But that started early on. I mean, I did guitar stuff in the greatest game in the world, Last Action Hero.
What is the actual best game?
Last Action Hero.
I think it got 3% in one magazine.
Yeah.
And that was being generous.
It was.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of effort into the music on that. But yeah, that was all guitar stuff, and so I was into Faith No More. And
if you do music for the games, did you get guidelines from the clients? Are you free in what you can do, or
sometimes, sort of. A lot of the times it's just, here's the game, give us some music. But sometimes it depends on the developer, really. Some were more specific. They had a specific idea of what they wanted. Certainly for Beast 2.
Oh, yeah, well, Beast 2 was literally, okay, here's the patches that you're going to use on the Korg M1. You know, patch 32, 75, and so on. And I said, I don't have an M1. And he's like, well, find one. So luckily I had a friend who just bought an M1. So I had to go around to his house and record all these different sounds.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, what wasn't cool is it was late at night when I could finally get there. So he'd already gone to bed. And he says, I leave the door open. You can just go in, record what you need to record, and then please leave quietly. Use headphones. So I did this, and then the next day he phoned me and says, did you get everything you need? I said, yeah, I got all the sounds, it's great, thanks so much. And he goes, yeah, thanks so much for treading dog shit up my stairs and all the way down again. Because it's at night, I can't see.
How long does it normally take to do music? What was the song you worked the longest time at, and what was the shortest idea or creation of a song?
That is very different on every game. I did one game in 20 minutes.
What song was it?
It was a game called Little Puff by Codemasters. It's like Dizzy.
Can you say that now?
Do what?
Can you say that anymore?
Yes. It's the game's name. Yeah, so 20 minutes it took me for that, because they needed it now. So I just got straight on to it. Oh my God. And then other ones, it could take weeks. I mean, it generally didn't take weeks for the Amiga. Because trackers are very instant, and more often than not, I would, just blast it out as quick as I could. I could get something done in a day that was a complete finished tune for a game, but probably if I was doing something that I wanted to be high quality enough, it's probably about 3 days on average for each tune.
Plus, they come to you the day before it's about to be released, back in the day.
Well, that could happen.
Audio was always the last thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we've got the graphics, we've got the levels in, we've done the play. It's really great. Okay, let's get some audio in there. You've got 20K or something.
There's also, I mean, one of the last games I did, Globule, that had about 40 pieces of music. So that took quite
40?
40, yeah.
Theatre.
So that was difficult.
You have a randomizer in your tracker?
When you get to about 35, I'm thinking, I'm dead. I'm just dry. I'm just a shell of a man. I don't know what to do.
It's creativity killer.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. So that took me weeks. I mean, that was a long time.
But they did say afterwards, 14. We said 14.
No, 40 tunes. So it took a while.
And is there a special song, a special music you made, both of you love most? The song you made by yourself you love most today, or you are proud of? What's your favorite?
On the Amiga, obviously.
Yeah.
Magician's Castle. This was a game that was never released.
Okay.
I think it came out on PC eventually, but it was in development at Psygnosis, and we had plenty of time to do it, and the theme was obviously a castle. So I really took my time, and I played a lot of them to Mike, and Mike goes, I think that's maybe the best Amiga music you've ever written. And of course, it didn't come out. But then someone showed it to me on a PC cover mount disc, running on a PC, but playing the mod files. So it eventually saw the light of day as like a freebie. Yeah, but I think if you Google it, you might find a couple of pictures. And obviously the mod files are out there as well.
One of my problems is that I always got given the rubbish games and the ones that had no memory. So most of my Amiga music is all 2 or 3 channels in about 20K, 30K. So there's not many of them where I think back and I think that sounds really good because they're so limited. But there are a couple of them. I mean, it's very rare that I got to do a 4-channel tune, but I like the tune that on Theatre of Death, the theme music of that. And I didn't actually write that for the game. I was just making my own music, and it just happened to fit when the game turned up, because I had no time for that.
But I think if we stretch things a little, it's fair to say that you did write 4-channel tracking music on an Amiga, but it saw the light of day on consoles.
Oh, that's true. Well, yeah, because when we moved on to the Mega CD, because we'd started doing CD stuff, the Mega CD was awful, but it had a second PCM chip in it, which had 8 channels. So I had one of the programmers convert the Pro Tracker player for the Mega CD. So I continued writing all my music on the Amiga, but it was on consoles. And I did Super Nintendo stuff as well, which I would write on Pro Tracker first, and then I would just port that over.
Well, one of the ones I always remember is Mega Apocalypse.
Mega Apocalypse.
That was perfect.
Thank you. I do like that one. That's quite good. They never got released on the Super Nintendo, but it eventually came out on the internet. But if you listen to it, I mean, the Amiga version is exactly the same, because that's what I did. I wrote it on the Amiga and then just ported all the notes over to the player. And so, yeah.
So Mega Apocalypse is the CD32 version of the Apocalypse on the Amiga, or?
No, it's the sequel to Mega Apocalypse on the Commodore 64.
Ah, okay. This is not my time. This is Patrick's time, because Patrick is...
But I don't play that game.
Okay.
Should
I have something... yeah, I've got something with a game called Wipeout. Anyone Wipeout?
Yeah, but that's...
Yeah, how lovely is it to program or do something on a system working on a RISC processor coming from the 86,000 architecture?
Well, in fairness, the Amiga was still used here because the music for Wipeout was written using the Amiga as a MIDI sequencer, using bars and pipes.
And the textures, all the textures were done with Deluxe Paint. So
and the voice in there that goes 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, that's
this was the Amiga voice synthesizer.
Okay, so you just take it as a player.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was CD audio, so I was using lots of outboard gear like Akai samplers, JD800 synthesizer, and so on. But even some of the percussion and the drums in that music is Amiga. There's some Amiga bass, Amiga claps. So it was a big transition going to CD audio. But, you know, the Amiga comes along for the ride. Not only is it sequencing the music, but you're hearing it right throughout the game. So, yeah, it's...
Psygnosis was so Amiga-based that after Commodore had died, I mean, everyone was still using their Amigas because everyone was so comfortable with it. The artists were so efficient with Deluxe Paint that they couldn't use anything else. It took a long time for people to start to use Photoshop for texturing instead. And we had bars and pipes to do our music with, so we carried on. I mean, I carried on using my Amiga for music until about 2010.
So we can say Amiga 37 sees that the Amiga made its way up to 2010 in the games because all the guys making the music on the Amiga for CD music.
Well, I was.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of the games that I worked on throughout the PlayStation era and beyond, that was all done with my Amiga 1200.
Yeah, and I continued using mine to the early 2000s, and then eventually I had to go to PC for various reasons.
Yeah, for the nice filters from you can use old synthesizers on a PC.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when I found Propeller Head Reason, or Reason Studios Reason...
The plug-in monster.
Yeah, I mean, that was it for me. I had to make the transition. But I was just thinking about the fact that you and I used the Amiga 1200s, so they were nice and compact. And we had, you wouldn't really call them music studios, they were really echoic, horrible rooms. Back in the day.
Back in the day, terrible. Yeah. The rooms that we worked in, we were basically in some old office building that was clearly not designed for anything.
Was it like a warehouse originally for cotton or something?
The Century building.
Yeah.
It was likely. It seemed that case, all brick buildings and very empty inside.
But I mean, the room that I worked in, the roof was almost this high, and it just had sheeting, like tin sheeting. So if it rained or snowed or anything, you can't even hear yourself think, so you have to wait for it to stop raining.
Like a tin roof?
Yeah, tin roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so cold in winter.
No tin roof, it's a tin roof.
Yeah, yeah. But it was so cold in winter that it was really cold in there. And that's my moniker, cold storage. That's where this comes from. Because one day the programmers were saying, you know, how's the music going? I said, oh, I'll just nip back to cold storage and get it for you. But anyway, at this building, we got broken into by thieves. And they took so many different things, computers, monitors and everything.
Yeah.
But luckily, Mike and I, because we loved our Amigas, we took them home with us every night so we could play games on them and stuff like this. So we'd come into work and like, shit's gone, man. I mean...
Everything.
Yeah.
The whole place was empty.
And we took our own synthesizers in. These were stolen as well.
Yeah.
But we had the Amigas. Everything was still there, in the safe place.
We would have lost everything that we had because we didn't have backups then because they weren't connected to the network and it wasn't that easy to do that and we weren't very careful.
Well, honestly, they weren't very careful either.
No, not at all.
We had a room where there was a backup machine that used tapes. And Mike and I just did our own backups. We didn't bother with what they were doing. And you'd walk past this room and it would go, ribbit, ribbit, like a frog.
Yeah.
We just thought this was normal, but this actually means, can I swear, is it okay? Change the fucking tape. That's what it meant. And none of these guys were changing the tape. So, yeah, nightmare.
Nightmares.
It's funny because back then, nobody really put any value on what we were doing because everyone was always looking to what was coming. So the stuff that we had, once it was done, that's it, move on, next one. So people weren't careful about this sort of history. It was very, very throwaway.
Today, are you still in business with computers, with music? What are you doing now?
Yeah, I'm a senior audio programmer at the moment. I've always been in games. I've never been outside the game industry. So, I mean, I got into programming a lot more over time. I mean, I did start doing stuff on the Amiga, for just sound stuff, sound driver and things like that. And then eventually after I'd left, I ended up getting a full-time job doing audio programming. I'd still do music, of course. I'll never not do music and sound effects. And yeah, I've continued that to this day. So yeah, doing AAA audio programming. now.
But you also do voiceover, Mike.
I do. I also do voiceovers.
Yes.
And Tim, what are you doing now?
So I'm still wearing multiple hats, including this Atari one.
Yeah.
Yay.
You've been hit once or twice here, or is it just...
No, it's like, I was explaining to a guy, it's like back in the day when you had Atari and Amiga, and it's like when you're kids, you play, you kick the shit out of each other, and then you get to a certain age, you're having a beer together, and you go, hey, dude, remember the time I pushed you out the window? Yeah, you bastard, oh, that really hurt.
I love you.
Yeah, I love you, man. So, yeah, I'm currently managing a studio, well, the art side of it, at a company called Numfum GmbH in Switzerland. But other than this, I'm still doing music for projects when people approach me. And if it's interesting and I've got the time, then yeah, I'm still doing bits and bobs.
So you're doing music for retro games, or do you make more for modern games?
Honestly, anything. When people are coming to me and saying, this is my project, would you do some music for it? Sometimes I do it for free. If it's going to take a little bit longer, then
Don't say it loud here. Here's so many ears listening, and
sometimes I do it for free. No. But yeah, so I'm still involved, not as heavily involved, because what we do at Numfum, we've got a 3D engine, speech recognition, but internally, when we produce demos, I write the music for the demos and, do the voice recordings and the mixing and stuff like that. So
you're still in the demo scene?
I'm not actually in the demo scene. I tried to get back into it, but you have a slight problem here in Germany, where in the UK, if you're with MCPS PRS, the royalty collection people, then it's cool. You can say, yeah, but not this project. Don't collect the money on this project. But in Germany, they go, no, we own your ass, Mr. Musician. We will collect music on everything. What, even this little demo that's playing in a Halle? Yes, even this one, they're going to have to pay. So this kind of puts people off. So I guess maybe I have to write under a different name or something.
I hope this comes to the right ears.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that this could be good chance for the audience. If there were any questions, it's a bit dark for us, but if anyone has a question for one of the two guys here,
Also wenn jemand von euch Lust hat, eine Frage zu stellen, ihr könnt sie auch in Deutsch stellen, wir versuchen sie zu übersetzen.
please do not hesitate to contact me here. Is there anyone who has a question? Yep. He raises his hands. Okay.
Nein, das geht so.
Any questions?
Wow, I guess we answered everything.
Ah,
no, wait.
We gave them the chance.
What is your favorite Amiga game? War das richtig? Ja. Your favorite Amiga game? What you like to play?
Meine
Dein Lieblings-Amiga-Spiel?
Amiga-Spiel sind Hired Guns.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, really, even now, it's just really atmospheric. Didn't you work on that as well?
I did levels.
Yeah, he designed
I might
some
have done
levels.
some level design for that game, yes.
Yeah.
And yours? Do you both still play games?
So,
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Oh, very much so. Favourite Amiga game? That's so difficult because there's just so many games. I mean, I used to just play and write music. That was all I ever did.
Okay.
But what did I get obsessed with?
Samantha Fox Strip Poker.
Oh, a classic.
Classic.
Yeah.
No.
That game only lasts 5 minutes.
And do you own the old things? Do you own the old retro stuff, Amigas or other computers or soft and hard?
Do you have your old games?
Yeah, I have a loft area. And one day, many years ago, I discovered eBay. And then it was
You're
just
a dirty fucker.
buy. I bought everything.
You bought? You did not
Yeah.
sold? I thought you sold your stuff.
No, I went absolutely crazy. Like, first I started with, I should have had a Spectrum back in the day. Ka-ching. Should have had a BBC Micro. Ka-ching. I just like, what's this? Tatug Einstein. Ka-ching. What's this thing? Jupiter Ace. Ka-ching. And I just bought them all, and then my wife found out.
Yeah.
Sorry, my ex-wife found out.
I know the stories. They're so fun. I started doing a second PayPal account for this. And I just told my wife, darling, there's some money movement. Don't care. It's some money moving from
You have a second PayPal account.
Okay, we have another question from the audience. Which software do you use? A tracker or what software was there at the days?
Say
For
again?
doing music, the
Yeah.
software he asked for example if you use tracker software.
Today,
Today? Back in the days. Back in the days.
well, it started with Ultimate Sound Tracker. This is before I was actually doing music for games. When I started doing music for games, I'd gone to Noise Tracker. I actually did one with Star Trekker, and then Pro Tracker came out and destroyed everything, and that was just Pro Tracker from then on, because it was so good.
Yeah, gleichfalls.
Gleichfalls.
Yeah, very briefly I had to play with it, but it wasn't used in any... I wrote some songs with it, like maybe one or two, but they weren't used on any games.
Yeah, I played with Octalyzer when it came out. I really liked that.
Octamed as well. Yeah.
Die Frage war, ob er mit 8-Kanal gearbeitet hat oder 8-Channel, deswegen. Das hat man.
Genau.
They didn't hear the question.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But in games, though, it was very difficult to get somebody to agree to have an 8-channel play routine.
Yeah,
At
you-
least because...
You could have that on the title screen if you're lucky.
Yeah. Nothing else playing with
Because it uses the processor so much to create the extra channels.
Yeah.
Ja. Wir müssen die Fragen laut sagen, man hört es uns nicht.
Achtung, Box.
So the question was, if you had to take care for NTSC mode because it would like play faster because of the 60 hertz thing, did you make extra music playing it slower for NTSC versions of the game?
I did. Did any of yours break on NTSC?
I just wrote it slower for PAL. No, I honestly never took any notice. Oh, I mean, I did hear it, And yeah, it sounded a little schneller, but other than that, it wasn't a problem, I don't think.
Mostly it would work, and I think some of them I just changed the speed in Pro Tracker from FO6 to FO7, slowed it down a bit. But Bill's Tomato game was a big problem, and I had to redo almost every track on that. Because I used some of the more esoteric Pro Tracker effects in it, and it would break a few things. So I had to redo quite a lot of that. It took me about 2 weeks or so. But for the most part, it just worked. It was all right.
Yeah, okay, then we have to thank you to do this panel with us. If possible, we will do another interview later for our podcast in some weeks, in some days. Would be great if you can just give us an email where we can reach you, and if there are any other questions, we can answer them in our podcast too, because we are doing this every 2 weeks with interviews, and it would be great to have you there. Thanks again. Okay. Thanks being on stage with us.
Thank you very much. Vielen Dank.
Okay.
Danke sehr.
Danke.